What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Real Podcasters, podcast on how to grow and monetize your show. My name is Skylar, and I have been podcasting for about 4 years now. I have a podcasting business, recording studio, post-production business. This is something that I do all day, every day. Podcasting is what I do full time. And it's my intention to tell you everything that I screwed up on my way in my podcasting journey. I made a lot of mistakes, financial mistakes, time mistakes, topic mistakes, and I want to share all those with you. That's the point of this podcast, is to help you with that. Now, before I go any further, I'm not the all-knowing podcaster here. In my experience, there isn't the all-knowing podcasting guru out there. Everything depends on the goal with your podcast, because your goal dictates what actions you should take, which is why it's always so important to set a goal. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about how to do research on a guest. So if you have an interview show, you have guests on, and you don't want those interviews to suck, right? So how do we make sure these interviews don't suck? Well, we need to know as much information about these guests as possible. So all of you should have a list of potential guests you want to have on your podcast that you're working on. Try to get that to about 25 to 50 people. And so let's say you have that list and you pick a guy that you're working on a few people, getting them on, interacting with them on social media, reaching out to them, emailing them, whatever you do, and you get one. Yay, a win. You get someone who is going to come on your show, someone that you've been wanting to get on, that has the expertise you want. How do we prep to get them on their show? How do we do this research on them to make sure we ask them the right questions, to make sure this isn't just the same interview that they've done 100 times from on other podcasts? We need to do good guest research. And this isn't something that needs to take a long time. It doesn't have to take hours. Honestly, you can get quite a bit of research done in 20 to 30 minutes. So the first stage for me in doing research on a guest is I will open a new note on my phone, or I actually have a actual like Google document that I fill in every time to gather and collect all the data. But I'm going to talk about this as you have a note on your phone or your computer. That way you're able to just do it straight from there. So what I'll do, I'll create the note and I'll put their name at the top. I'll put John Jacobson interview or research at the top. So that way it's all categorized. I can see it and I know what it is when I'm looking for it later. And I will gather as much information as I can on the person as fast as possible and put it in there. And I like to personally start with LinkedIn. The reason I want to start with LinkedIn is because a lot of people have a lot of information about them on their LinkedIn as far as career, school, where they lived, jobs, things like that. And so I get a lot of background on them pretty fast from LinkedIn. If you don't find anything on LinkedIn, if you look on Facebook, Instagram, sometimes YouTube, you can find a lot of good information on these people pretty quick. But I always start with LinkedIn. I'll pull all that information I can get, and I will just start typing it in to a note. I'll categorize it. School, jobs, career, relationships, things like that. That way I can get a good idea on where they're at. And putting these things in order is also helpful. If you're interviewing them about their life, that's really helpful. Sometimes it's just unnecessary. So do the research that you need to do for your show. But this is just the first step of doing research, is get everything. Were they guests on other podcasts? Do they have a YouTube channel? Get all the information you can, put it in there. And then the second stage of doing research is going deeper into things that matter. So what I personally like to do is see if they were a guest on any other podcasts. If they were, listen to those podcasts. Those podcasts, a lot of times they were asked certain questions. Like, let's say they were a guest on 10 different podcasts and you go and listen to 3 or 4, 10 of them. You're going to notice what questions are commonly asked to that person and what aren't, which will give you information on, hey, this is probably something that they did research on, that they know this person knows about. Or maybe you're just seeing people are doing a lot of generic questions and it's getting really annoying to maybe the guest to just keep answering the same question over and over and over. What we don't want is to have the same interview that other people have done. We don't want to do the same thing, which is why it's important to see what other people have done to make sure it is not the same. We want to stand out, especially if you're using your podcast as networking. When a guest comes in and you've done research, you know about their history, you know about their jobs, their school, what they did last week, when you have this information, they can tell you're prepared. They're like, okay, this guy's taking it seriously. They also look at you as very professional and someone that they want to learn from, or someone that they want to connect with more, or they're also going to want to push more people your way and be more likely to promote your show. So if you're asking them good questions that not everyone else asked them, questions that their audience hasn't heard 1,000 times, and you're creating content and putting it on social media and tagging them in it, chances of them promoting that go way up. So stage 1, gather all the information. Stage 2, go deeper into that information. Go scroll on their Instagram, go watch YouTube videos they have, go listen to interviews they have. And then number 3 is we're actually going to put in the information in our final stage of research and just write in, okay, this is the relevant information. If my podcast is on business and I could tell that they did these certain jobs, well, I'm going to want to put that in my final note or stage of research and say, hey, this is the relevant information that I will or might even need on my show. And then these are the questions I'm going to ask them. These are the questions that aren't asked all the time. Maybe one or two couple of them are, but these are the ones that I know that they could answer well. Because the worst thing is asking a question that the guest knows nothing about, or they know a little about, but they pretend to know a lot about it, and it's just trash information. So making sure we ask the right questions, super important. And then once you have those questions, I personally like to send those questions to the guest so that with the way they can prep, they can kind of look at it, or I just show them before we start recording and I say, hey, these are the types of things I am planning on asking you. What do you think? And most of the time they say, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. And if there's anything they don't want to talk about, great. We just cross it off right there. I personally like to print these things out and ask them from paper because technology is just distracting. But those are the 3 stages of doing research. Gather all the information, go deeper in the information, and decide what information you want to bring out on the podcast. Each stage doesn't need to take a lot of time, especially if you're listening to episodes that your guest has already been a guest on. Those you can just play in the background while you're driving, while you're folding laundry, while you're doing whatever. This isn't something that needs to take a long time, but putting in just 30 minutes to an hour of research on your guests can go a long way in not just building the relationship, but also the quality of the content, which is overall going to help you be able to grow your podcast and to monetize it faster. If this episode was helpful, we're going to have an even better episode next week. So follow and subscribe to the show on your podcast listening app so you are notified when that episode drops.